So this is Critical Mass interviewing Devin Townsend here in Gothenburg at the Brew House, where you are going to play tonight, which is really cool. And I think it's the third time we're in Gothenburg now for like 16 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. You were at Sticky Fingers and at the Metal Town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hooray.
And in the meantime, you've been releasing, what is it, 3 albums, 2 albums? I don't know. Something
I don't
like
know
that.
either at this point.
No, many albums.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that, you know, humanity has for Devin Townsend is, of course, where do you get your time? Because, you know, the rest of us struggle to get the kids to school, and you like released 2 albums in the same time.
Well, I struggle to get the kids to school too, you know, like the practical part of my life is no different than anybody else's. However, I'm away on tour a lot, so there's that, which has its own challenges, as you can imagine.
Yeah, of course.
But I'm lucky in that my my job is the musical element of my job is what I do to relax as well.
Okay.
So when I'm not making music, I'm playing guitar or making music in some other form or thinking about it. So, you know, a lot of the times the level of productivity that I seem to be able to maintain has more to do with the fact that I just really enjoy the process.
Okay.
And when I have a spare moment in a hotel or at home or after all the work is done, I'm usually just plunked it away on the guitar and ideas just kind of evolve. So.
Do you bring a studio, like a portable studio for your tours and stuff?
In a way. I mean, I've got Pro Tools and whatever on my laptop, but it's not a studio per se. It's just the capabilities there to do small things if I need to. But I've got a guitar and some echo units that I tend to, you know, at least be able to get my ideas flowing with.
Yeah, I understand. Do you think, without being too personal about stuff, but can you sort of handle the musician side of your work with your family side? Do you think you have had to, you know, sacrifice stuff for your line of work?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I think any relationship requires compromise if it's going to exist past the romance stage of it.
Yeah.
And that's not only between a man and a woman, but also musicians and also career versus family.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I've been married for so long, and my relationship with my wife, the dynamic of it has been heavily steeped in career versus relationship for 20 some odd years. So she has to compromise, I've had to compromise, the career's had to compromise, everything has to compromise, right? And I think a lot of times compromise gets viewed as a dirty word where people are sort of sticking with this sort of
not in Sweden
altruistic
everything we do in Sweden is compromise.
I think that's healthy because it's the only way to kind of achieve these things, right?
Yeah.
The only way that I could possibly hope to do what I do and still maintain some sense of normality at home is to compromise in multiple ways, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think the only real downfall of that, other than time spent away in important moments or whatever, is just tired. You know, you're just perpetually kind of tired, right?
Yeah, I understand. Cool. Well, now you're here, and for myself, I've been pretty much following you for the last 20 or so years.
Holy shit.
I think we are pretty much the same age. I don't know, but 40-ish.
Yeah.
And so, has your attitude towards music business changed? Of course, I know the story of how you came into the business and everything, but is your view on the music business, from your point of view, where you are now in charge of your own creativity versus where you were at the start, has it changed much over the years?
I think it has. I think that the obvious things have changed, like the things that we're all affected by, like with internet and whatever. But I think on a personal level, it's changed in the sense where I've come to terms with the fact that I don't have to love the industry and touring in order for me to rationalize doing what I do. Like, for a while there, I was kind of under the assumption that if I didn't like to tour, if I didn't like the social element or the sort of personal, these sort of invasive qualities of playing live and all these sort of things, right? If I wasn't comfortable with that, that ultimately was an extension towards everything else that I did, and I shouldn't be doing it at all. But I took a couple of years off and realized that there's a distinction between making music and then the business of making music.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I can continue to find inspiration, because it is really separate in my mind, right? But now I'm at a point where if I want to continue to do that and have those moments which are very important to me, at least currently, the price that you pay for that is kind of perpetual touring, and your face is everywhere and all that sort of stuff. And I mean,
but you do tour much, you do.
Yeah, I do. Well, we have a new management company that insists on it, and
was it the Swedish one? Was it?
No, from the UK.
But they did have Opeth as well.
Yeah, they still do.
They still do, yeah.
Yeah. They've got Catatonia as well.
Catatonia as well. Oh, there you go.
So it's like, you know, but I think that to the credit of that sort of decision, I mean, times have changed, and you have to present your stuff if you want to keep in the public's eye, right?
Yeah.
And my reasons for wanting to keep in the public's eye are more just so I can maintain the ability to be creative in all these new and increasingly interesting ways, right?
Yeah. What kinds of things influence you today? Do you find new bands to listen to yourself, or going back to old bands? Or?
As I get older, I find that I'm less and less interested in bands in general, you know, and like heavy music in particular, I just don't have a lot of patience for. But
you do have a lot of collaboration. I just went here to see Gohira.
Yeah,
the other day, and I saw that you did a small thing on their album.
Yeah.
So you do tend to keep yourself up with stuff.
I do.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that there's certain allegiances that I have created for myself over time that are important to me. Like you know, there are several bands that I do collaborate with and plan to in the future. And that's more to do with the fact that I just really like the music, whether or not they're popular or what have you, right?
Yeah.
But what keeps me influenced, I think, at this point, my music has never really been technically too important to me. I mean, it's very important to me in that I have a compulsion to do it.
Yeah.
But in terms of how important I think anything I do is in the grand scheme of life, I mean, it isn't, right?
It is work, right?
Yeah, but I guess what I'm getting around to here is that because it's an inevitable result of my personality is just to create things.
Yeah.
It's the inspiration for it is everywhere. Like, you know, conversations or nature or experience or lack of sleep or what have you, all contributes to, you know, the frame of mind I find myself in, and that frame of mind ultimately, when I have those moments to just plunk away on the guitar, comes out in different shapes and forms, and at the end of the year you've got a certain amount of things that usually pretty accurately describe the frame of mind that I found myself in, right?
Yeah.
So the music in and of itself isn't important, but the process is very important to me, at least, right?
I know for a fact, because I have the Swedish drummer Morgan Ågren on my Facebook.
Awesome.
And he wrote just, I think the same day I got the Epicloud CD in my hand, I saw Morgan Ågren's Facebook status was like, I'm in Los Angeles right now doing the drums for Devin Townsend's new record, and I was like, shit, this man is so even when you have released a new album, you also have another new album in the making.
Well, I've got so many albums kind of in the wings that a lot of what excites me about music is the setup of it and like finding the right people and you have to be ahead of yourself because it takes so long to actualize it, right?
Yeah.
And Morgan is just this dude that has sort of come into my life. And
how did you meet him?
I met him through TuneTrack, where I do
the drum.
I was up in
Drum Kit from Hell, right?
Yeah. I was up in Umeå there.
Okay.
About 3 months ago.
All right.
And I did a little Easy Mix pack for their company.
Oh, cool.
And I stayed with Matthias, who's one of the main software developers there. And
yeah.
he ended up becoming a good friend, and I was playing him this music that I've been working on slowly, because at that point I was just finishing off Epicloud and what have you, and I was playing him this new project, and it's very quiet, and it's very sort of like folk and sort of country and but quiet, right? And I said, and I'm, you know, it's like
Ghost was a quiet one.
No, it's a lot darker than that. It's like it's like Johnny Cash more.
Oh, cool.
So
not even in the metal.
No, shit, no, God no. But I said I'm looking for a drummer who can be quiet.
Okay, and then you found Morgan.
Well, yeah, and because Morgan is such an astounding drummer.
Yeah.
That it takes, in my opinion, the world's greatest drummers to not have to prove that they're the world's greatest drummer. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because a lot of time, like, drummers have a real investment in.
They do.
You know.
You tell me.
But Morgan, he just doesn't need to. Like, you can tell by his playing that he's capable of such astounding things. Yeah. That there's not many drummers that would do this record properly. You know?
Exactly. It's like this one goes to 11, but he stays on 3.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And but when he does do something that's interesting, it's so interesting that it's like the tip of a huge iceberg, right? Yeah. And I've not met him in person. I'm meeting him next week there when we play in Stockholm. Cool. But we've just been doing it over the internet. But, you know, my relationship with drummers tend to be challenging, not because I dislike them at all, or I think they're you know, not appropriate or untalented. I mean, I've got so many drummers in my world, and most of them are really, really good, but there's just something that happens with drummers. It's just there's like typically the relationship I need to have with a drummer is intense. Yeah. Because it's like I don't need a bass player or a guitar player. I don't need all those things. I need a drummer. Yeah. And the drummer's personality guides the ship, right? And you know, and it takes sometimes years to get to the root of somebody's personality, right? And I find often with drums and drummers, it's just dramatic. There's like the setup and the tracking of the drums and the right drums and fucking bam, 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 but with Morgan, so far, I just send him files and he sends me back perfect drums. That's cool. Yeah. Do you send him like programmed drum files? I send him 2 mixes. I send him a stereo mix, because my demos are pretty, they get the point across a lot more than they used to. They used to be just scratches, but now they're pretty good. They're like 60% of what the album's going to be. Okay. So I send him 2 mixes. I send him, starting at 0 on my Pro Tools, I'll send him a mix with the drum machine. Okay. And then I'll send him the exact same mix without the drum machine. All right. So he can listen to it and say, well, there's what he did, and that's what the momentum of the snare does or whatever. And he just does stuff. But, you know, I think the thing also that I enjoy so much about him as a drummer, and other drummers I've worked with particularly in the past, is like, I don't like telling people what to do. You know, because it should be obvious. Yeah. Like, there's some drummers that just don't play the right things. And then you have to like spell it out, right? But there's other drummers, Morgan being one of them, that plays the right stuff, and he sends me the files and he's like, what do you think of that? I'm like, it's killer. Okay. What's next? That's cool. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Well, I was up in, last summer I was up in Örebro and met up with Jens Bogren. Of course, yeah, and I spoke with him about, you know, different things, and he talked about the deconstruction mixing and how challenging it was. He was like sweaty still. Yeah. 6 months after it was finished. Yeah, I mean, I think Jens has got a procedure that he utilizes when he mixes. Yeah. And this was just so far out of the box that I think he had to stretch that. Yeah. You know, and I'm very demanding, not very demanding in terms of like a fascist about it, but it was something like that, man. I mean, if you write something like that, you know how it's supposed to sound. Yeah. And if there's 700 things happening at the same time, I mean, really, it's like, I know how it's got to be, and it's not like there's no option. It can only be this one way, but really, it's like you get a certain amount of time, and any discussion on that is just going to end in it just being a pile of mud, right? Yeah. So I'm like, this needs to go up, this needs to turn down, this is blah, 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 this needs to echo. And there's certain amounts of compromise that are acceptable and something like that. But that record in particular, it's you know, it's insane. It's what it is, right? So
take a song like the Mighty Masturbator, like a polka band and a symphonic orchestra, everything.
But I mean, in order for it to speak, it has to be at a certain level. If you've got a day to mix each song, like poor Jens, man, he was like fucking just stressed, man, and like, you know, I remember this one thing because he's a pretty conservative type cat, you know. He seems to have like a lot of control over himself, which is admirable, right? But there's this one point where I was like, yeah, Jens, I need a microphone. He's like, what do you need a microphone for? I'm like, I just need a microphone. I got an idea. You got to give me the microphone. What sort of microphone? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Just plug in a microphone. And he's like running around the studio. I'm like, I'm going to lose the idea. I just need it now. I need it now. And he finally plugs it in. He gets it set up. And he's like, I need your level. I'm like, I just don't. And then he pressed record. And I'm like, balls! And his shoulders just went like, and he just stood there for a second, right? I was like, okay, we got it. We can move on. And he's just like, so, you know, I think there's like different ways of working.
Yep.
And I think Deconstruction Mix was successful because the things that I have no patience for, he has a ton of patience for.
Yeah.
And the things that he has no patience for, I have a ton of patience for, right? So.
I think it's a great album. It's kind of hard to listen to, but when you do, it's kind of cool.
Good.
Yeah. And you did do it live. I saw it.
Yes.
Yeah, that was insane.
Oh, God. Yeah.
You aren't going to play the Mighty Masturbator tonight, are you?
No.
That's too bad.
We'll play Planet of the Apes, though.
Yep. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
You know, right now you have a really intense, what do you say, phase of your life with records coming out all the time and touring and stuff. Yeah. But where do you see yourself in like 10 years? You know?
Hopefully with a lot more money.
Okay.
And a lot less work.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you make any money on all these albums? Do people buy them?
No.
They don't.
So sometimes they do.
Yeah.
You know, I don't make a lot of money. I make.
When you make an album like Epic Cloud,
sure.
Do you record the album as a whole in a big fancy studio, or do you do some of the work in a studio and some of the work at home, or
some of it at studio, some of it at home, some of it on tour. Like,
yeah.
You know, I'm always kind of picking away at things. You know, I was working on a record here, the one that Morgan's doing like an hour ago. Like, I'm always working, right?
Yeah.
But it depends. Like, you know, my record budgets are really small, or relatively small. So I'll spend most of the budget on like the one thing about the record that I find interesting, like the gospel choir for Epic Cloud, or the orchestra for Deconstruction, or
was it like a Czech orchestra? Or
yeah. So, and then I'll do the rest of it for like $500.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
you know, people tend to work that way. I know Catatonia works that way as well.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's, you know, all roads lead to Rome, right? So as long as it gets from point A to point B, which it always seems to, then and monetarily, I mean, it seems as if I keep touring, I'm able to make a salary that, you know, keeps my rent paid and my car paid for, and like we got a lease on a car, and like, you know, and we got children and all that shit. So if I keep touring, I can afford to live. Yeah. Right? If I stop touring at this point, I'd have to reevaluate everything, right? Yeah. But it seems to be.
Have you tried producing?
I fucking hate producing.
Okay, I'm sorry.
God, no, it's okay. Just like, I just don't care enough about other people's like dramas to like have to coach them through it. Yeah. Like, you know, it seems like that's a lot of it is a psychological aspect of it is much more an element of production than the technical aspect of it.
But you did produce something.
I produced tons.
Yeah.
But I just got to the point where there's less money in production than there is in anything else. The only people who make money in production are the people who can like get past that emotional thing, right? But I just get sucked right into it, you know? Yeah. You know, I remember years ago recording in Gothenburg with Fredman, and he was able just to be like, okay, you shut up, okay, you do your thing, you just do it, and then he'd go home at 5 and still manage to get work. You know what I mean?
Well, you know, the Swedish socialist sort of way.
I guess, right? I guess, but you know, Canada's got a tint of socialism in it as well, but I seem to have too much empathy to be a producer, right? Yeah. And that has just led me to countless hours of like micromanaging other people's problems
Yeah.
And it's just, I find that just exhausting, man. You know what I mean? So, who knows? At the end of it, it's like whatever road I find myself on, I'll try and do my best at it.
Yeah.
Right. But in 10 years, it would be nice to have found a way to exist with my ability to be as creatively free as I find myself now, intact, without as much pressure to like produce and tour and all that sort of stuff. But the industry's gone in such a way that, you know, everybody's on salary, right? Like, you want to keep doing it. It's the option at this point.
But you're still here, and you're creative,
and I'm very proud of it.
Yeah,
I'm very happy with it.
A lot of guys have disappeared along the way.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, as a post note on that, I'm certainly not unappreciative of where we are, and you know, and I certainly don't take it for granted. But I do find that because of the genre of music I've chosen to specialize in, it requires a level of productivity that makes balance between family and the rest of it like a challenge sometimes, right? Yeah. So, you know, hopefully in 10 years it'll just be the same thing, just a little more balanced, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Now, I don't know about you, but in 3 days we have an American election coming up.
Right.
Yeah. Do you have any opinion on that, or?
I'm not informed enough. I mean, it's very easy as a knee-jerk reaction, specifically somebody in the arts, to think that Obama is the logical choice. But unless you've got all the information on all those things, I think that you're just subscribing to a lot of the rhetoric that people want you to subscribe to.
Probably, yeah.
You know, I think that for me, I spend a fair amount of time paying attention to it. And, you know, a lot of what people want you to believe about Mitt Romney as well is that, you know, the real conservative, religious, right kind of vibe, which is, but really there's a part of me that really doesn't know if it's a huge difference between the two. I wonder if it's just a figurehead, right? And ultimately it's big business that controls it either way, right? And you're voting for an aesthetic under the assumption that you do have a part in it, right? Yeah. But as a Canadian, and as I would assume as a European, right? Our view on this, I think you have to be careful in terms of who you back and what sort of rhetoric you subscribe to, because, you know, it's a dangerous path to go down, right? I don't think anybody is infallible.
You're very unpolitical, are you?
I don't think musicians.
In your art,
I don't think musicians. What I'm trying to provide for people is an emotional outlet to you know, either adhere to certain moments of their lives, or that contribute to certain situations. And I don't think that my role as a musician is to make political statements. I think I'm here to play music for people. Yeah. And my own beliefs, I've had a habit in the past of being more vocal about my distaste for organized religion or whatever, but that plays into my music a little more than the political aspects of it. But I think politics and religion are things that are your best bet is to just keep your own counsel on, unless it's something you can have a real significant effect over. You know, like I vote in terms of being a Canadian, and I have opinions on business and how it relates to the organization of religion versus spirituality. You know, of course I've got opinions, right? But I don't want people to think that, you know, they can't enjoy the music that we're doing because I feel one way or another about something, right? So.
Well, some bands like Gojira, they have their environment, you know, thing going on. So I think there are a couple of bands out there.
I think it's a slippery slope too. Yeah. You know, and I think specifically for Gojira, right? Because people are looking to put an identity on all these musicians that they're interested in, or that you know, because you have to sell it. Like a lot of, you know, we did a photo shoot in London the other day where all of a sudden, after years of saying I don't want to come across as like the crazy guy or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden I'm doing photo shoots again in a mad scientist outfit and all this shit.
Okay.
But, you know, at this age and where I'm at now, I'm secure in who I am, and I'm secure in the fact that I'm not crazy, right? So it's like, I do recognize specifically in the UK that in order to sell what you do, you have to be represented as something. Yeah. And I think that it could be worse than to be a character or to be a caricature of yourself, because the music is ultimately what's important. Oh yeah. But a band like Gojira, or I can't think of another example, or somebody that maybe has a very right-leaning political view or what have you, you know, you better believe that the press is going to pick up on that and make that their identity, right? Because they need to sell it. Right? And so I think Gojira may have just started off as being like, hey, you know, we're sensitive people and we think this is a bad decision to make, but you know, before you know it, they're viewed as like this ecological, biological band or something that maybe is. They are. Yeah, I agree. But I wonder how much of that is turning into, you know, a misrepresentation of what their original interests represented, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know. I don't know either. No. I think Meshuggah has had some of that environment stuff going on as well. So, I think anybody who, I mean, to be blunt, I think anybody who has a brain should be concerned about the environment in some, absolutely, you know? Yeah. But I mean, I guess that's the thing is a lot of times thinking in music is things that are, you know, not necessarily encouraged, right? Because it forces people to confront things that maybe music is not, you know, there in their life to. You started off your career in metal with an album called Sex and Religion, which was sort of also a little bit provocative, wasn't it? Yeah, it was in that sense. It was provocative for Steve more than I. Yeah, maybe. On my front, it was provocative in the sense that I felt it was. You know, something that I had to sing about and I had to say. Yeah. And, you know, when you have to sing somebody else's lyrics, man, it's like, it's a hell of a thing. Yeah. You know, it's like. You weren't that old, you were. Oh, yeah. There's certain lyrics on that record that Steve should have been singing, not me. So I was a little uncomfortable with it. That's funny. I haven't been listening to it in years, though. Yeah. Maybe I will now. We're probably going to have to wrap it up here so I can start the vocal. Yeah. Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah. It was a good chat, though. Thank you, man. I like it.